Thomas and his friends, trying to save Minho, who was previously captured by the Wicked organization. But, unexpectedly, it turns out that Wicked has built a final city, which is equipped with anti-zombie security, which they call the Last City, which made Thomas and his friends must be able to penetrate the city to find Minho's whereabouts. Can they save Minho and stop the outbreak of the virus? Let's get straight to the point. The film begins a few months later, after Dr. Eva and Jensen manage to bring Minho, as well as several other children. Here is Brenda and Hor, trying to catch a train belonging to Wicked. Then they carried out an attack to slow down the train, while Thomas and Vince trying to chase the car from behind, because it turns out they intend to save Minho, which is in one of the carriages. Thomas and Pins finally managed to get on the train. However, because of a plane picker suddenly came to stop them. Here is Brenda and Hor also decided to go lure the plane away from the car. By that, Thomas told Vince to immediately continue their plans before the Vika soldiers come. And by attaching a small bomb to the connection between carriages, they finally managed to separate the carriages. It's from the car. After making sure that Minho is in one of the carriages, which they have broken up with, Thomas immediately told his friends to separate the carriages. It's from the train tracks. While Thomas and Vince trying to stop the Wicker soldiers, who wants to catch them. On the other hand, when Brenda and Hor trying to escape from the pursuit of the picker plane without realizing they are actually trapped in one place. So the Wicked soldiers also plans to catch them both. But it turns out they were the ones who deliberately trapped the Wicked soldiers, so they can ambush and hijack the plane. They then brought the plane. It's heading to Thomas and others. They used the plane to bring the carriages they had prepared beforehand, until finally they managed to bring the carriage. Get out of there. In short, after they arrived at a safe place, Thomas and the others immediately got into the carriage to save the youth, who was captured by Wicked. However, even though they managed to save Iris, it turns out that Minho was not in the carriage. It made Thomas feel very disappointed, because of Minho was his best friend and he couldn't save him. There Iris said that Wicked plans to move the entire his research, including teenagers, which will be used as experimental material, heading to a new city, which they call the Last City, or the Last City, because everyone knows that no, there are more cities left since the outbreak of the flare virus. Besides that, Iris also said that Minho actually was also on the train they attacked earlier, but he was in another carriage. Realize that Thomas also plans to chase the train again, so he can save Minho. But unfortunately Vince rejected Thomas' plan, because they have spent time for 6 months just to plan all this. And they also can't let it go. Hundreds of people they had saved before, just to save one person. In the middle of their chat, suddenly some planes belong to language comes and started searching the area. Which thing that left Thomas with no other choice, besides following Vince's plan, to immediately prepare the ship and go to an island. Even so, Thomas can't just leave Minho like that. So, he planned to free Minho alone, but seems Nyatt and Privan know that Thomas will definitely do something reckless, and in the end they decided to join with Thomas. And after a long journey, they arrived at a tunnel, where only the tunnel is the only way that could take them through the hills. By force, they decided to go in there, because only that's the only way they can go. But not long ago they entered. Suddenly some cranks appeared, who immediately blocked them. So the Ivans immediately stepped on the gas to avoid the attacks of the cranks. But they hit a piece of iron instead, until their car flipped over. Which thing that forced them to run away from there before the cranks came again, but unexpectedly. Apparently from the front too, some cranks appeared to block them. Luckily when they tried to fight the cranks, suddenly Brenda and Foray come to their rescue. Until the end, they managed to get out of the tunnel. At first they thought that the city in question, Virus, was destroyed because the zombies succeeded mastering the tunnel, which is the last defensive post of the city. However, it turns out that the city in question is not the old city, but a new city surrounded by giant walls. Even in each wall there is a turret, automatic, that can fire missiles. See that? Thomas was also very sure that Weekend definitely brings Minho into there. So they have to be able to find the way to enter the city without being caught by the soldiers. Because of course, Weicker already recognized all their faces. Meanwhile, in the city they call Della City, looks like Teresa and Dr. Eva, who is having a meeting with some important people. That is the largest contributors of funds in the Weekend organization, to discuss the issue of the flare virus outbreak. Their Dr. FF said that they finally managed to extract the serum U from inside Minho's body, which has the highest success rate compared to previous serums. But to be sure that the vaccine works well, they have to do the final experiment, namely by inserting the vaccine directly in the human body infected with the Fuller virus. Initially, the executives thought that Dr. Eva's experiment was not very effective. They even had plans to move supply of funds to another organization who can ensure their safety. But luckily here, Teresa managed to convince them to keep faith in the Weekend organization. On the other hand, when Thomas arrived in front of the gate of Della City, it seems that it turns out that there are already many people from a place where a demonstration is taking place because they are not allowed to enter. But without realizing it, turns out some drones, Weicker's property, managed to find Thomas' whereabouts while a chip scanner is on the back of their neck. So Jensen also knows that Thomas is there, and he immediately ordered the soldiers to kill him using the turret. What? This? Here's the good thing. Thomas and the others managed to avoid the turret attack. However, suddenly some people came to catch Thomas and his friends. Then they were taken, heading to one of the buildings. They're around there. At first they thought that the people who kidnapped they are people from Wicked. But when Thomas, seeing that one of the masked men is Gailey, he immediately beat him because he was still upset with Gailey, who had killed Chuck. Here, Gailey accepted Thomas' punch with an open heart, because that is indeed the mistake here. Gailey then said that when they were at Wicked headquarters at that time, he apparently managed to survive the flare virus, and he was saved by a group rebel who is called Anti-Wicked. And now it joins them to fight Wicked, who has taken over their city. Their Gailey introduces Thomas to a man named Lauren, who is the leader of Anti-Weekend. When they met him, Lauren, it turns out, has lost almost part of his face due to virus infection, which has spread throughout his body. Here Thomas says that he and his friends want to enter the city because, according to Daly, just Laura, you can allow them to enter there. As a businessman, Lauren also said that he could have helped Thomas as long as Thomas can pay at a fair price. Even Thomas offered that if he could get into the city, then he will bring a vaccine that can cure Lawrence, which made Lawrence agree, as long as Horahan and Brenda stay there, as a guarantee for Thomas to keep his promise. Without further ado, Gailey then invited Thomas, Nyatt, and Crippen to enter a water channel, which is connected to the city. Until shortly after, finally they managed to get in without caught completely. Even though they are already in the city, Gailey told Thomas to be careful, because in that city, there are so many policies who always patrols for 24 hours. Soon after they sneak into the city, they arrived at a place frequently used by Gailey to observe the activities of Wicker scientists. And when they were observing one of the buildings, they managed to find Teresa's whereabouts, which makes them very confident that Teresa must know where Minho is. Here Daly then told Thomas to take advantage of Teresa in searching for Minho's whereabouts, but because Thomas still has feelings for Teresa, he also rejected Gailey's plan because he was afraid that Teresa would be involved in this problem. Hear that, Nyatt immediately got angry because Thomas cares more about Teresa, who once betrayed them all, compared to their best friend Minho. But here, it turns out the reason why Nude becomes so restless, namely because he has been infected by the flare virus, and he began to worry if he can't hold on any longer. So, he immediately wanted to save Minho before it turns into cool. On the other hand, when Teresa started to do his experiment on a girl, unexpected, it turns out that the vaccine came from Minho's body, able to stop the spread of the virus outbreak. So, he tried to tell him about it to Minho. But here, Minho that looks very weak because the fluids in his body are constantly being squeezed out. He was very angry and tried to kill Teresa. But, unfortunately, there was a guard there who immediately stopped him. Then when Teresa was about to return to her inn, suddenly he saw a man who looked like him, with Thomas. So, he tried to follow the man. And after Teresa managed to find Thomas' whereabouts, without further ado, Gailey immediately helped Teresa and take him out of the city. There Teresa finally said that Minho is now in the detention cell, located on the basement floor, along with 28 other teenagers who also had the same fate as Minho. But he also said that Thomas and the others don't just go in there, because the place is guarded with very strict by the Wyker soldiers. Not only that, if Thomas and others dared to enter the building, the soldiers, it must be able to know their whereabouts, because of Thomas and others still have tracking devices behind their necks. Hear that, Thomas immediately told Teresa to release the tracker first. Then when Teresa saw that Brenda was still alive, he even had time to ask Thomas, when was the last time they treated Brenda? And when Thomas said that Brenda only received treatment while they are still on the right arm, Teresa finally realized that it turns out that the blood in Thomas' body able to treat the spread of the flu virus. While on the other hand, when Jensen meets Dr. Eva said that the virus flares, it turns out to be able to spread through the air, which it signifies if they can't immediately find the vaccine, then they just have to wait until they were all infected by the virus. But even though they have done various ways, they still can't find a vaccine. So that Dr. Eva began to lose hope. Even he has also accepted the reality that they have lost to the flare virus outbreak. Meanwhile, when Teresa and the others entered the building, Thomas Nyatt and Gailey tries to disguise himself as a soldier and unexpectedly finally managed to get in without being caught. Then, after they arrived at the basement floor, they immediately paralyzed all the soldiers who is there, so they succeed find the whereabouts of the prisoners. Here Thomas then realized that Minho, turns out there is none, very much, because Jensen apparently just moved Minho to the medical room until Thomas, Teresa's pulse, tried to go to Minho's place, while Gailey tries to open one of the rooms, which is used to store the vaccine. While they were in the elevator, they had met Jensen there. Jensen said to Teresa that he had seen Thomas outside the walls, even though at this time Thomas's was right behind them. Much later, as they were about to enter the medical room, without realizing it, Jensen suddenly came while bringing some soldiers to capture Thomas. But luckily Thomas managed to escape after Teresa locked the door. Even so, Jensen finally managed to find Thomas' whereabouts until Thomas and the sharks forced to fight the soldiers while looking for where Minho is. While on the other hand, when the soldiers are off guard, Minho suddenly woke up and immediately attacked everyone there. So it's not even intentional. Find Thomas and Nude who is fighting the soldiers, the three of them later trying to hide in one of the rooms. However, because Jason managed to find their whereabouts, they finally decided to jump from the top of the building towards the pool is right below them. However, when they are going to leave, unfortunately they were surrounded by soldiers who was watching there. But suddenly, one of the soldiers, it attacks the other soldiers, which turned out that the soldiers were Gailey who came to save them. Then when they were hiding from the pursuit of the soldiers, Gailey said that Brenda and the prisoners were waiting for them in one of the parking lots. However, because it seems it is no longer possible last longer, they also have to meet Brenda immediately to take vaccines they have received previously. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, suddenly the soldiers came towards Brenda and others, so that Brenda had no choice but to run away from there, so that the soldiers couldn't catch them. Come on, come on. Oh please. But, unfortunately, even though Brenda had tried to avoid it from the pursuit of the soldiers, eventually, the soldiers managed to corner Brenda. Because it is surrounded, Brenda then fired her flare. And not long after that, Privan also came to save them by using a crank that's around there. Mom beside. At the same time, Lawrence had apparently gathered all the people to carry out an act of rebellion, and after he ordered the rebels to destroy the city, without further ado, he immediately brought explosives, high power, heading to the front gate, and blow up the gate, along with him. The incident even made the rebels finally succeed, entering the city, and start to attack, thus causing chaos everywhere. Even the chaos also made Thomas and others are getting more and more difficult in search of a way out, which made Brenda worried if they can't get out of there. But fortunately, Vince and Jorge suddenly come while carrying a picker plane which they had stolen before. Meanwhile, when Thomas and the others realize that Nyate's condition is getting worse, Daily Don Minho trying to go to get the vaccine first, but not long after, for some reason, precisely, Nyate began to lose control of herself. So even Thomas had to take the Nyate away. But before that, Nyate also gave her necklace to Thomas. Then when they both were almost there, suddenly Teresa's voice was heard, who told Thomas to go back into the building, while saying that vaccine originating from the Thomas area can save Nude. Even he can also save everyone who there is in the world. At first, Thomas plans to follow Teresa's words, so he can save Nyate. But unfortunately it was too late, because Nyate has now changed to Crank and started attacking Thomas. They both fought each other until the end. Nyate also tried to stop the virus is in his body by killing himself. After seeing that his best friend died because of the virus, Thomas couldn't just let it be until it also decided to go back into the building to end it all. While Brenda and the others could only be sad when they realized that one of their friends had died. In short, when Thomas arrived inside the building and met with Dr. Eva, he also plans to surrender himself so that he can save all the people who there is in the world. However, unexpectedly, suddenly Jason shot Dr. Eva. And not only that, he also immediately drugged Thomas. It seems that Jason is planning to take the vaccine that comes from Thomas' blood, so that he can stop the outbreak of the fair virus, which apparently also started to spread too in his body. But when Jensen was about to inject the vaccine, Teresa immediately hit Jensen and tried to get Thomas out of there. So Jensen and Thomas dueled there. In the midst of the incident, some rebels too fire missiles at the building, the place where Thomas and Teresa are, which made things even more chaotic. Even Thomas was shot by Jensen. Then when Jensen was about to shoot Teresa, Thomas immediately threw an object towards the glass door, the one behind Jensen. Even the cranks in there started out and immediately attacked Yinzhen. Then when Thomas and Teresa tried to go to the roof of the building to avoid the flames growing fire, they both had time to despair, because they are impossible can survive the fire. However, without realizing, suddenly Hor and others came carrying planes. So Teresa immediately brought Thomas heading towards the plane. The flames of fire is there, making it difficult for them to save Thomas and Teresa, but when they managed to bring Thomas get on the plane, suddenly the roof of the building collapsed, which made Teresa fall too. Until the end, they decided to leave the city, which has now burned by the rebels' attacks. In short, a few days later, after Thomas recovered from his injuries, he and the others trying to start a new life on an island in the middle of the ocean. Then to commemorate, everyone they know even told them to write down all names starting from friends, best friend, and the family on the rock, so they can remember those people there. Here Minho gives a necklace belonging to Nayat, which was previously brought by Thomas. Then when Thomas opened the necklace, it turns out that there is in it a letter written by Nayat before he died. In a letter, it said that he felt very grateful because he chose to follow Thomas, which thing it made him able to survive so far. This he is also very sure of, that they can definitely save everyone and start a new life. Even so, he did not expect that he will lose to the flare virus. So, he started to feel afraid while continuing to imagine whether it will end. Same as Chuck. And also Winster. Also don't forget to thank Thomas, who has become part of his family during their journey. And it also ordered that Thomas deserves happiness for what he has been doing all this time. And that is the end of the film The Best Runner. Okay, maybe that's all the storyline of the film The Best Runner. Hope you all are entertained. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Okay, see you in the next videos.